Now, you can get a lot of things, it turns out, on Craigslist. You get a car, get an apartment, but a job at the White House? Well, that's exactly what happened to Beck Dorey-Stein. She was a waitress and a cashier when she applied for a job as a stenographer. She had no idea she'd be working at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue until she got interviewed. Well, Beck started out working for President Obama, and things, as you'll see in a minute, went smoothly. But when Donald Trump took over, well, things changed in a big way, as the new administration didn't want anything, it turns out, on the record that upset the author. She tells her story in a new book called From the Corner of the Oval. I spoke with the author just a short time ago. First off, tell everybody how you got the gig, because I had to read it a couple times to really, literally through Craigslist, you became a stenographer in the White House. How's that work?
That's right. So back in 2012, I was living in Washington, D.C. I had 5 part-time jobs, and I applied to a job on Craigslist. It was to be a stenographer at a law firm, and I blew off the initial interview because my shift at Lululemon ran late, and only later found out it was actually a job at the White House. So the woman from Craigslist called me. She was like, just so you know, for transparency's sake, this is a job with the president, and you'd be traveling on all of his international and domestic trips. So I followed up with the real interview.
You know, one of the things you get from the book, especially with what's happened in the last couple of years, that I guess it depends on the boss in part, but your experience when you walked in there and the gravity of being not only an eyewitness to history, but the behind the scenes when even the cameras weren't on, the respect, at least in that administration, that they had for the job that was in front of them. I'm not just talking about President Obama, but the people that surrounded him as well. It gave you at least hope, it seemed, that not only did they take the job as seriously as it warranted, but also that there was a respect for obviously the job that they had to carry forward.
Absolutely. There was a high level of professionalism and integrity, and also a respect for the space and sort of a gravity of understanding we are a very small part of this ongoing history and this sort of living history of getting to work in the White House. And that was very much the case in the Obama administration. And as soon as inauguration happened in 2017, there was a serious difference, a parting of the ways from day one, where my first day in the Trump administration, walking in, and there was just sort of a chaos and a self-importance I hadn't seen before.
Well, talk for folks. I think most people have an idea what a stenographer is, but you make a point in a book and also an editorial wrote after that it's not just to keep a record, but presidents in the past, they liked the stenographers because that was their opportunity to correct bad reporting or misrepresentations of what happened. They liked that there was a documented history of what was actually said, not interpreted.
Absolutely. So there was one time on Air Force One where President Obama thought he was getting to speak off the record, which for him on a long trip can sometimes be a relief because it means a reporter can't quote him directly. It's off the record. And I'm sort of this living, walking record for him. And so he saw me and I had my microphone in hand and he was like, oh, it's on the record. And I was like, it's on the record, sir. And so he understood and respected, just as the rest of the Obama administration did, that when I was president meant that we were going to be recording what it was said and then transcribing it accurately, which meant that there would be a record of exactly what was said and the context around it. So that oftentimes during a press briefing, if there was any sort of contention about exactly what was said between two people, the press secretary or the president at times would hold up the transcript and say, that's not what was said. Please refer to the official White House transcript. It makes it very easy and very straightforward.
Now, Beck, you get to the current administration, and I don't care where somebody comes politically from this. Everybody knows they're night and day in just about every possible way, both presidents and administrations. But the general order or respect of office, you write in your book that at one point Bill O'Reilly was coming in for an interview, and just when it was done, how it was conducted, even before the interview, the off-the-record nature of it, presidential norms, you knew even from the transition that, forget how different they are politically and personally, just the way that they look at the office itself of the presidency is even more polar opposite than the public even imagines.
Yes, very much so. And during the Bill O'Reilly interview, President Trump was late, but that's not a big deal. That happens. President Obama was often late because it means he's going from one meeting to another. And say he was meeting with a kid from a Make-A-Wish Foundation, of course, he's going to spend a few extra minutes with that child. And so things get pushed back, but you try to stay on schedule. So that seemed fine. But then what was strange was that 15 minutes after the interview was supposed to begin, Hope Hicks showed up and actually said, Bill, the president would like to see you in the Oval. And so then Bill O'Reilly disappeared for an hour to the Oval Office. And that struck me as so wild because it's the sitting president's time, which is invaluable. And I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, thinking, okay, he must be in the Situation Room or he must be in a really important meeting. And for that hour, I know that he was just talking to Bill O'Reilly off the record right before an on-the-record interview. So it very much seemed like there was some sort of colluding going on, that why wouldn't you just do the interview so that you can go on to more important matters than talking to members of the press?
And there seemed to be zero interest on the part of the incoming administration to even know how the White House works or how typical rules of dealing with the press. I mean, you were told and others that he doesn't like microphones near him, which makes obviously the job of the stenographer so difficult. And they believed in video more than they believed in audio, and that's part of the reason why we have so many contradictory instances of what happened, what was said, what wasn't said. We really shouldn't be in the dark as much as we are.
No, and what's wild to me is that they're not committed or even interested in trying to be more transparent. I think he kind of comes at this angle of it's all fake news, and he tries to antagonize the press in a way that's really detrimental to a democracy. And you can see that most clearly in the fact that he didn't want stenographers who have been around for administration after administration. He didn't see the need, and his team didn't see the need to have them in the room. And that right there is sort of like, but we're the record. You know, that way we have a clear record. And the fact that they didn't want us in the room, and the fact that they're relying on media reporting and videos, but then at the same time castigating that exact same outlet doesn't make any sense.
The book, again, From the Corner of the Oval. Beck Dorey-Stein, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And we will end the show on an uplifting note. This Renoir, it was looted by the Nazis, but now it has been returned to its rightful owner 75 years later. It will be on display in New York City.